Hello everyone. We are going to do another reimbursement method today. This one tends to give people problems, and I don't say that to scare you because it's actually very simple. But this one is all about reading the word problems and reading them well and understanding the contract language. Also, this also depends on a little bit of understanding of the previous methods that we've talked about, such as the DRG and per diem. So I hope you enjoyed this one. Like I said, it is one of the more difficult ones. So if you can get this, I think you're pretty much golden because it only gets easier from here. All right, this type of reimbursement is called the stop loss. Okay, and what the stop loss is, it actually is a provision in the contract that says, you know, it kind of tacks on to the DRG or the per diem, depending on what the hospital contract states. It actually kind of tacks on to the per diem or DRG and says, you know what, we're only going to pay you this flat rate because that's what an episode of care reimbursement does. However, because we're nice as an insurance company, yeah, right, because we're nice, we're going to take in consideration that you might have some extreme cases that fall outside of the boundary. And so we're going to try to give you some compensation for those extreme high-cost outlier cases that you might be carrying in your hospital. And that's what the stop loss was created for, was to give that little extra bump of reimbursement to a facility that does handle high-cost outlier type cases, the exceptional cases, not the typical cases. All right, these, again, typically build off other methods of reimbursement. Most specifically, we're going to see these building off of DRGs and per diems, which hopefully we already know how to work those, so that's not a big deal. But I want to kind of walk you through how to calculate these because I think the way, and not saying I'm awesome, but yeah, I'm awesome. But I like the way that I lay these out when I'm working on them because to me it makes it pretty simple and it makes it easier to follow because you guys know by now I'm all about following the formula, you know, total charges minus contractual adjustment equals allowable, blah, 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 blah. I like it where you can plug in the numbers and they're labeled there for you. And this becomes really important in this case as well because we want to make sure that you're understanding the process enough where you can follow it through the formula and identify every piece of the reimbursement puzzle. So I'm going to show you my scratch paper right now because I want to show you what this is kind of going to look like. Again, the scratch paper and the sample problem we are about to work are both attached in Blackboard. I do recommend that you pull these up so you can reference them while you're listening to this video. Hopefully you're not watching it too closely. But we do hope that you are at least listening to it so that you can get an understanding of this type of reimbursement. Alright, here's my sheet. Let me see if I can get the lighting right and the angle right. Okay. Okay, so now you see this is our normal formula. This is what we've been dealing with. Total charges minus contractual equals allowable. Deductible, subtotal, coinsurance, estimated insurance payment, bam. Okay, there it is. Now, if you'll notice what I've done here though, notice the allowable. Still in the same spot. But what we've done is we've broken that into two components. I call it the regular component and the stop loss component. Okay, the regular component, that's what I call it. I don't know what you would actually call it. The regular component is going to come from your DRG or your per diem, depending on what the contract says. Your stop loss amount is going to come from the additional reimbursement they're saying they're going to give you for the exceptional case. So let's look at a problem. Notice how both of these are playing into the allowable. So what we're going to do is we're going to come up with a regular component, which again would be the DRG or the per diem. We're going to come up with a stop loss component. We're going to combine those and plug that combined number into this allowable spot, okay? So let's look at a problem. That's going to be the easiest way for us to do this. If you remember, we had that DRG schedule before. You might want that to be handy as well. It's an Excel file, so you can just save that to your computer. I'm going to pull mine up because I believe we're going to be working with the DRG in this problem. So again, you'll need the sample problem, you'll need a DRG schedule, and the sample scratch paper if you desire. Some people want to work it out by themselves, and that's cool too. Alright, the problem said that Joe is admitted into Drew Memorial for inpatient services. Joe has Blue Cross Blue Shield with $1,500 deductible, of which $150 has been met. So he's actually met a little bit of his deductible this time. After the deductible is satisfied, Joe is responsible for 10%. Now, according to the contract between Drew Memorial and Blue Cross Blue Shield, inpatient services will be paid by DRG. Okay, so that's telling us that that regular component is actually going to come from the DRG schedule. The contract also includes a stop-loss provision stating that charges in excess of $30,000 will be paid at 65%. In addition to the DRG payment. So it's telling us we're going to get the DRG payment, then we're going to also pay a little bit extra based on this stop-loss provision. It tells us the DRG bill is $136 and the base payment rate is $5,500. Total charges excuse me, are $37,750. So here's what I'm going to start out doing. Again, plugging in what we know. We know that total charges are $37,750. So I'm going to plug that number in onto my paper. Alright, we also know that we're getting paid based on a DRG contract. It says we're getting paid according to the DRG. So I'm going to go to my DRG schedule. It says we're using DRG 136. So I'm going to click up here until I find 136. And on DRG 136, I am showing a cardiac, congenital, and valvular disorders, age greater than 17 without complications. And, excuse me, I'm showing a relative weight of 0.5902. So remember, with the DRG, we use the base payment rate times the relative weight. So we're going to take the point, I'm going to have to write this somewhere else, 0.5902, and we're going to multiply that by our base payment rate of $5,500. Alright, I'm going to get my calculator out. I'm going to do this with you. 0.5902 times 5,500. And I get 3,246.10. So in that little section where I have broken out the allowable into the two parts, by regular, I'm going to write out that amount, 3246.10. Okay? Now, that's not our total allowable. That's part of our allowable. But there's still another piece that we have to consider. And that piece is going to be the stop-loss provision. I'll get it out in a second. Alrighty, so let's go back to our problem and let's continue to read this contract language because that's where we're going to get the details of the stop-loss provision. It says, the contract also includes a stop-loss provision stating charges in excess of $30,000 will be paid at 65% in addition to the DRG. Okay, charges. So that's total charges. Okay, so anything over $30,000, they're going to pay 65% of anything over $30,000. So let's ask ourselves, were our total charges over $30,000? Yes, they were. And they were over by $7,750. So I'm going to take that excess amount, excess of $30,000, which is $77.50, and it tells us in the problem that they're paying that at 65%. So we're going to take the $77.50 and we're going to multiply that by 0.65. Go to my calculator, and I get that gives us additional allowable of $5,037.50. So now, and I hope you can see this, our allowable now has been broken into the two parts, the regular part and the stop loss part. Now I have actually worked the different portions of that, the DRG and the stop loss. Don't know if you can see that, but I've done that math. There's my DRG calculation, the relative weight times base payment rate. Here's my stop loss calculation, $77.50, which was the in excess of $30,000 times 65%. Now, what I'm going to do, and I put them both of those answers I put up here. What I'm going to do with those two numbers is I'm going to add them together, and combined, they're going to create my allowable. So by adding 3246.10 and 5,037.50, we will come up with the total allowable for this particular episode. So let's do that real quick. Oops, put my calculator down. 3246.10, 5,037.50. So I have that our total allowable is $8,283.60. Now, with that information, it's starting to look like our normal problem, where we have our allowable, we can turn around and we can calculate our contractual adjustment. So I'm going to take the $37,750 of total charges, and I'm going to subtract $82,83.60. And I got this really huge contractual adjustment of $29,466.40. Because, relatively speaking, we're still only getting, even though we had that stop loss provision, we're still only getting $5,000 more additional dollars from that additional contract. So, still bad, but oh well. This is not my hospital. This is my sample hospital. So, let's see. My sample hospital wouldn't stay in business very long, I can tell you. Our deductible. Now the problem, again, this is getting right back into the same thing we've been doing. The problem tells us that we have a $1,500 deductible, and we've met $1,500 of it. So I'm going to take the $1,500 deductible, and I'm going to subtract the $150 he's met. Remember, he doesn't have to meet that part again. So $1,500 minus 150 equals $1,350 worth of deductible that he still needs to meet. I'm going to plug that in, $1,350, and subtract that from my allowable. 8283.60 minus 1,350. 6933.60. Okay, the problem tells us in addition, he has a 10% co-insurance. 10% of what? 10% of subtotal. So we're going to take 10% of our subtotal, $693.36. And that gives us $6,240.24 of our estimated insurance payment. Now, when you're answering the questions A, B, C, and D, what's the contractual adjustment, what's the allowable, blah, 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 blah. Make sure on the allowable question now you have two components that you're going to have to add up, kind of like patient liability. If you've got deductible and co-insurance, when I say give me total patient liability, I'm wanting you to give me both pieces of that puzzle. It's going to be the same way on the allowable on this problem. I need you to go ahead and combine that DRG component as well as the component for the stop loss. So don't just stop after giving me the DRG component. I need to see both. Now, when your problem is done, I'm going to kind of show you, this kind of ruffles our formula up just a little bit, but it's still the same thing. Still the same basic formula. However, we're busting that allowable out into two different parts. The regular, which is the DRG or the per diem, and then that stop loss component, which you saw how that was worded in the contract. Excuse me. Typically, it says something to the general effect of charges in excess of some amount will be paid at X%. So you've really got to watch that language. Okay, watch that contract language and make sure you're picking up all the components of the stop loss. Remember that we have to then consider, how much did we meet the stop loss criteria? Did we have charges in excess of the set amount? In this problem, it said charges in excess of $30,000. We had total charges of $37,750. So we did exceed the stop loss point in the contract. Make sure you add those two components together to get your allowable. Then you continue on with your math largely the same way you've been doing it, by calculating your contractual adjustment, your deductible, co-insurance, etc. Alright, again, don't feel bad if this one makes you go, what? Because most people do have a little bit of problem with this math method, and it's because they've gotten used to that formula. But all we're doing, we're using the same formula, but what we're doing differently is we're adding that extra component. We're adding that stop loss component, which just adds one more element to the allowable. It does nothing to the math that we've been actually working so far. That format is staying the same. So it really doesn't throw a big problem in there, but it does add an additional component. Just make sure you read your contract language and you understand what the problem's telling you. Again, all of these attachments, your sample problem as well as your scratch paper is attached in Blackboard. You will also need your DRG schedule probably handy, as well as, you know, the knowledge in your head about how to calculate a per diem. I hope you haven't forgot that. Don't forget that. Anyway, you will need this stuff, and it is available for you in Blackboard for your viewing. Now, what I do recommend, because you know these modules are disappearing every week, you might want to go ahead and take that DRG schedule now and save it to your computer or to your stick, because once it's gone, it's gone. I might try to go ahead and put it out on the content page where you can have access to it all semester, but you might want to go ahead and just save a copy to your stick for, you know, easy access, because it's much easier to just go to your stick than it is to go out to Blackboard sometimes. Alrighty, so that's the stop loss method. After this, we have, I think, just a couple more little things to show you on the math. One of them is very simple. In fact, I'm going to teach my 8-year-old how to do it here in a minute. I'm lying. I'm really not. He doesn't care that much. But it's very simple. It's called the fee schedule. We'll do the fee schedule type of reimbursement. And we're also going to give a little nod to the resource-based relative value scale math, which, okay, fine. It looks confusing. It looks threatening, but it's actually not at all. So we have just a couple more to go. And, you know, after this, we've got basically another week left of the semester. After this set of lessons closes, we'll have another week left. So if you're having problems, you don't need to wait too much longer before you contact me, because we're getting down to crunch time. This math stuff will be on your final. I mean, you're going to have like a lecture portion of the final as well as a math portion, so you don't want to leave this stuff out, okay? All right. If you have any questions, you know how to get in touch with me. Make sure you do your work, because that's giving me the best feedback on whether or not you're actually understanding what's going on here. Until next time, we'll talk to you later. Thanks. Have a good day.